Hello and welcome to another Rightly Witterings, and today we're just about at the end of the process of looking at Visconti pens with two Visconti Skylights. You can hear the story about the development of them and why I've got to. So far we've spoken about the new Visconti Crystal Dream, which is just beautiful. And I've spoken about my original Visconti Bronze Age, which still is my workhorse. It's a gorgeous pen that doesn't show any marks. I like that. But today we're going to look at these two. Aren't they lovely? This is my original. Now what happened was, some years ago I decided, full of enthusiasm, that hell, I was going to write a book with a fountain pen. The reason was, many years ago, last century in fact, I met a very delightful chap at a meeting of the Crime Writers Association, and he had come over from the States. He was on a holiday and his name was Lawrence Block. Absolutely by chance, he happened to walk into the hotel where the CWA was having its lunch. And he joined us, and a very entertaining, delightful character he was. And while chatting, he was talking about a trip he had taken to Ireland, and he said he'd discovered a whole new technology, because he'd taken a manual typewriter, and he'd typed up a book on a manual typewriter. I thought, wow, that's interesting. And he said he was going to next try writing with pen and paper. In fact, he said pencil and paper, but I took it as meaning the same thing. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. And I contacted Visconti, in those days Dante Del Vecchio, and I said to Dante, what do you think about the idea of helping me with this project? And he said, I'm very interested actually. And I said, what I'd really like would be a pen with a very large reservoir, similar to the Bronze Age, but something whereby I can see exactly how much ink is in it. And he said, that's a brilliant idea. But he modified my design and came up with this, which is basically a Visconti Skylight. It has a clear viewing window here. I think if I just get some plain paper, it might show this up better. Let me get a nice Visconti notepad. Now, you can see here there is a little ink window, and I hope you will see here, and I'm going to lift this up so it's a bit more clear. There is another window, and if I tip the pen, you should just be able to see, I hope, that there is sepia coloured ink in there. And that was the basic design. It's a dual power filler, and that means that not only is it vast, this has 2¼ cc's of ink, I think, but this holds a massive 4 3/4, which is a vast amount of ink for those who aren't in the know. A standard cartridge converter will hold 0.8 or 0.9 of a cc, so this is the equivalent of 4, 5 maybe standard pens in terms of the capacity of the ink. And the idea was I wanted a pen that would hold a lot of ink so I could refill it as rarely as possible. But Dante had this brilliant idea whereby not only was it going to hold a lot of ink, it would have the two reservoirs, the small one at the front and the large one at the back. People have asked me, do you need to unscrew the back of the pen to be able to keep the ink flowing? No, you don't. This is not like a TWSBI where in order to get any ink out you always have to unscrew the cap. With this, you can possibly see now that there is very little ink in there. Just basically, there's a small reservoir there, there's a large reservoir here. This cap controls a piston that slides up and down, and when it's screwed all the way in, it blocks off this reservoir from this one. When you unscrew it, pull it all the way back, put it into a bottle of ink, squeeze the back down, as I've shown before, it creates a vacuum behind the piston and sucks up ink into the back as it goes forward. If you want to see more on that, please refer to earlier videos where I go into it in a lot more detail. With this, I was suddenly given a pen that would store a vast amount of ink. Unknown to me, it was to become the prototype for the Skylight. I've been using this pen just about daily ever since. So I think I've been using this for 5 years or so. It has a 23 carat palladium nib, which is a fine nib. Fine so that the ink, again, will go that bit further. It's made of the standard Homo sapiens lava resin, which is lava that's been bonded with rubber or something to make it firm and incredibly robust. It is as hard as rock, literally. You can tell how often I've used it by the way that the cap's enamel has worn off. This is a pen that has seen a huge amount of use. And yet, as you look at the material, there is no sign of any scrapes, chips, scratches, anything, because this stuff will see off almost everything. It has stainless steel, so it's sort of a steel age style. And I have to admit, it writes absolutely beautifully. I love this pen, I use it every day. But Visconti wanted me to have a look at this. Now, this is basically the same as my prototype. So what I'm going to say is, what are the differences? First of all, ink capacity is exactly the same. It's about 4 3/4, which is the same as the Crystal Dream. Ink capacity is the same. It has the same filling mechanism. All three have the same filling mechanism. They're all dual power fillers. They all have the small front reservoir, which is shut off by the back. When you allow ink to flow from the rear to the front, it'll top it up. But it is a strong, robust design. This has one big difference, which is when this was made, Visconti was still mostly using the palladium nibs. The new version has a gold nib. The new version is a Bronze Age throughout, as you can tell. It is no prototype. With this, the Visconti label is much more deeply engraved, so that hopefully the enamelling won't wear off as it did with the paint on this one. It's bronze. What else is the difference? Is obvious. The obvious difference is, with this, the sheath of Homo sapiens lava material has a cutout either side to show the window to the main reservoir, but it's recessed, so you can see, I trust, there has been a collection of dust on the inside there. There's a recess of about 2 millimeters, which I assume is the thickness of this material. With this, there is a window so that it's much more flush with the outside of the material. It's also got a little bit of bronze around the window, just so that it looks a little bit more elegant and fills in the gap. I assume it allows the acrylic or whatever it is they've got used in this window to fit slightly better. And that, I think, is pretty much it. There's no difference on the base. On the cap, it's got the clever design with a magnet so you can change whatever the cap is and put in your own birthstone or birth sign or whatever you might want. Everything else is pretty much identical, I think. So, yes, I think that's the only difference pretty much, is the filling in there. And the fact it's a gold nib. Do I like it? Hell yeah, to use a phrase. The nib is really smooth. Really, really smooth. Smooth, like buttery is the word that comes to mind. If there's a comparison, I'll say it's in the appearance of the nib, because with the gold nib there is a more obvious, I think, let's just see if I can get this a bit more clear. I don't know if that is obvious, but on the pen on the left, which is the palladium nib, there is a swelling at the base which is almost like an elongation of the nib. On the right hand pen with the gold nib, I think you can just about see that it's almost like a ball of iridium or whatever it is on the end. That's why it's so good at writing reverse, upside down in other words, but also explains the absolute smoothness of that nib. Now, one question which a lot of people keep asking is, which nib do you prefer? Damn good question. I really couldn't give a preference. I think that they're both just glorious. I really like my palladium nib. I'm going to carry on using that. But I do love that gold nib. It is just splendid to use and to write with. So there you have it. 2 Visconti Homo sapiens Skylight pens. This, the prototype, which was made some 5 years ago and has been used absolutely extensively since. This, the new type. Both gorgeous. Now, I have to admit, I've been asked several times by different people, why do you keep going on about Viscontis? Someone wrote today to say, why do you have so many Viscontis when there are so many other excellent pens? Because there's Pelicans, and he rattled off a number of different pen manufacturers. And the simple fact is, I have a lot of pens. I love my Conway Stewarts, as anybody who watches this will know. I love a number of different pens. But for sheer workhorse-like capability, my Viscontis are my favourites, because they have massive ink capacities. The nibs are second to none. I find them an absolute joy to write with. And so when I'm going to sit down and I've got to do a lot of research or a lot of writing, these are the pens I go to. As to which are my favourites, now, okay, these 3 win compared to the old one purely because I can see how much ink there is in them. I love having the windows. In terms of absolute favourite, for my money, I think the most beautiful of the three is the Crystal Dream. I love seeing the ink slosh around in that huge reservoir. I think it's beautiful, it is practical, it holds a huge amount of ink, it is still quick release. If you ever want to make notes in a meeting, this is going to be out and ready as soon as you want it. It wins hands down, I think, on almost every scale, but one. And that is, if I'm out and about and I'm actually working, this is an acrylic window and I would still just get nervous it might get scratched. So for going out and about, these two are, for me, the better two. I don't think they're as pretty, but that expanse of lava means that they are going to be, I think, more robust. But look at that ink. This has been a bit of a silly one. My videos often are, but at least I haven't spilt ink today. I haven't made a mess everywhere. That makes a nice change. So I hope it was interesting. If you enjoyed this, don't forget, go to the bottom. You can click on the link to my Patreon account. And if you want to support the channel, that's the best way of doing it, other than buying my books. Want to buy a book? I've got a load. If you would like to pass any comments or ask any questions, go to the comment section down underneath. Then there's the subscribers button. If you hit that, it helps me because it pushes me up the algorithms and all that sort of stuff. Then there's a bell. Hit the bell if you want to be notified of future videos coming through. Like it, share it, and then I'll be happy. And you want a happy author, don't you? So thanks very much for watching, and I will speak to you soon. Next week I've got something a bit different, which I'm enjoying. I hope you will too. Never mind. Take care. Keep safe and speak to you soon. Bye.